Our second reading is from Luke chapter 1, verses 26 through 39. The angel Gabriel was sent from God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a young woman named Mary, who was engaged to a man named Joseph of the house of David. Upon arriving, the angel said to Mary, "Rejoice, highly favored one, God is with you. Blessed are you among women." Mary was deeply troubled by these words and wondered what the angel's greeting meant. The angel went on to say to her, "Don't be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You'll conceive and bear a son and give him the name Jesus, deliverance. His dignity will be great, and he will be called the only begotten of God. God will give Jesus the judgment seat of David, his ancestor, to rule over the house of Jacob forever, and his reign will never end." Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I've never been with a man?" The angel answered her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Hence, the offspring to be born will be called the Holy One of God. Know, too, that Elizabeth, your kinswoman, has conceived a child in her age. She who thought to be infertile is now in her 6th month. Nothing is impossible with God." Mary said, "I am the servant of God. Let it be done to me as you say." With that, the angel left her. Within a few days, Mary set out and hurried to the hill country, to a town in Judea, where she entered Zechariah's house and greeted Elizabeth.
Within a few days, Mary set out with haste to the hill country. With haste. Haste isn't the language we usually associate with faith. We speak of patience, on waiting for God, taking time to discern. We counsel one another not to be too hasty, not to rush into things, not to make decisions before we're ready. But here is Mary, having just encountered an angel with news that will upend her entire life, and with days, she's running. Not waiting there, not just sitting there with the news, running to Elizabeth in the hill country, her feet carrying her forward before her mind can fully grasp what has just happened. Last month, 1,500 people fled the city of Al-Fashir in Sudan as fighting between militias intensified. Right now, this week, communities in the Kordofan region are trapped in what the United Nations call siege conditions. And people are still fleeing. Mothers disguise their sons as daughters to protect them from being abducted by the fighters. Families walk hundreds of miles toward displacement camps they've only heard about, not knowing if there'll be any food or shelter when they get there. The UNG refugee chief who just visited the region said that even fleeing is difficult because people are continually stopped by militias. Sudan has become the world's largest displacement crisis. 12 million people forced from their homes, and they move with haste. Not because they know what comes next, not because they have a plan. They move because sitting still means death. The movement, however uncertain, is the act of insisting on life. This is what Korean feminist theologian Chu Hee-young Kung means when she writes that Mary's obedience is not passive obedience to the powerful, but radical discipleship of discernment, risk, and resistance for liberation. Mary's haste becomes something other than panic or recklessness. It becomes strategy. It becomes survival. Theologian Kat Armas pushes this further. Mary is not the pristine symbol empire wants her to be, the spotless virgin or the silent, obedient mother. She is Mary the theologian, Mary the prophet, Mary the liberator. Her Magnificat is not a gentle lullaby, but it's a protest song, fierce, bold declaration that God is overturning unjust systems and lifting up the lowly. When she sings about God scattering the proud and feeling the hungry, she is naming the world that she already knows, where the poor are shamed and women are controlled, where holiness is defined by those in power. And through her body, God enters a very different kind of story. Mary's haste becomes the choice to seek sanctuary in community rather than face danger alone. Mary goes to that one person who might understand what it means when God interrupts your ordinary life with the impossible call. Elizabeth, who is 6 months pregnant with her own impossible child, living proof that God keeps promises, that the impossible becomes possible. Movement as resistance means refusing to stay still. When empire wants you passive, when occupation wants you compliant, when fear wants you frozen, to move even when you don't know what's next, even when the path is unclear, even when the outcome is uncertain, becomes prophetic witness. The ancient prophet Jeremiah understands this. God calls Jeremiah to work that requires movement, to pluck up and to pull down, to destroy and to overthrow, to build and to plant. Active verbs, all of them. Work that tears down systems and builds new ones. And Jeremiah's first response is to name his inadequacy. I'm only a boy. I don't know how to speak. Jeremiah sees himself clearly, young, inexperienced, and uncertain. But God doesn't say, come back when you're older. Come back when you're ready. God says, go to all to whom I send you and speak whatever I tell you. Do not be afraid. And then God reaches out and touches Jeremiah's mouth, an intimate physical gesture that says, I'm putting words here that you yet don't have. I'm equipping you in the very act of calling you. The call and the captivity arrive together, not separately. Not call, then preparation, together. We live in a time of profound uncertainty. Globally, 123 million people are forcibly displaced from their homes, the highest number ever recorded. We see climate crisis accelerating, democratic institutions under threat, violence and injustice that should have been dismantled generations ago, still crushing the vulnerable. And we navigate our own uncertainties too. Transitions in work, in relationships, in what comes next. Retirements that bring both freedom and questions, moves from homes we've loved to places that offer better care, transitions in work, in family, in health, in what we thought the rest of our life would look like. It would be easy to interpret uncertainty as a signal to wait. To say when things are clearer, when we know what's next, when we feel more confident, then we'll act, then we'll move, then we'll do the work of building and plucking and planting. But that's not what Mary does. That's not what Jeremiah does. And it's not what the Sudanese families walking through the night toward the Chaldean border are doing either. They move now, not because the path is safe, not because they know what they'll find, but because movement itself is an act of insisting on life. And this is precisely Jeremiah's work, tearing down and building up, plucking up and planting. Jeremiah spoke to a people who had seen their temple destroyed, their city conquered, their way of life shattered. The structures they counted on were gone. The institutions they trusted had failed them. And into that devastation, God called Jeremiah to speak. Not to restore what was, but to plant something new. Because some things have to be dismantled before new life can grow. Some things are already dismantled, whether we're ready or not. We live in a time like that. Whatever we thought was permanent, whatever we assumed would always be here, it's not. The church of the 1960s is gone. The church of the 1980s is gone. The church of the 2000s is gone. The church that existed before COVID is gone. The promise of hard work, guarantees, is gone. The climate patterns that shaped agriculture for millennia are gone. We can grieve that. We should grieve that. But, beloved, restoration is not the same as transformation. We can only do what Jeremiah was called to do, to tear down what diminishes life, to build what makes it flourish, plant seeds for a future we might not ever see fully grown. Movement as resistance means we don't wait for perfect conditions. We move because the work of justice doesn't pause for uncertainty. The hungry need to be fed now. The homeless need shelter now. The stranger needs welcome now. The earth needs tending now. People looking for churches are seeking communities that will take climate change seriously, that will stand up for racial justice, will create space for LGBTQ plus folk to flourish, that will challenge economic systems that crush the poor. They're looking now, not when we're ready. Mary runs to Elizabeth because she needs confirmation, needs someone to say yes. The impossible thing is happening. You're not alone. Blessed are you. And when Mary arrives, Elizabeth's baby leaps in her womb because even the unborn recognize when God is doing something new. We need each other like this. We need the people who've been walking this road longer, who can say, yes, this is hard. Yes, the outcome is uncertain, but you're not the first to walk through fear and come out the other side still breathing. We need people who come running to us asking, is this real? Can I do this? Will you walk with me? We need one another's courage to fuel our own. Sister Teresa Okore, a biblical scholar from Nigeria, reads the Annunciation as God respectfully asking for Mary's consent. Not commanding, but asking, will you do this for me? In Luke's telling, Joseph is not even consulted. The decision to carry the child is shared only between Mary and God. This detail speaks to a sacred reclaiming of Mary's own body in the one of the most personable and intimate ways imaginable. God meets her directly, calls her directly, honors her agency in a world that often refused to see it. Mary, a young woman living under Roman occupation, navigating empire's power, facing real danger, finds her voice, claims her authority, says yes, and she moves. That's the pattern. Not certainty, then movement. Movement as an embodiment of faith. The Sudanese mothers disguising their sons as daughters and walking through militia checkpoints toward an uncertain future aren't doing it because they're certain of safety. They're doing it because staying still means death. A movement, however dangerous it might be, however uncertain it might be, is the act of insisting on life. That's prophetic witness. That's what the prophetic call means, to be called forward. We don't know what comes next. None of us do. Not individually, not as a congregation, not as a society. But we know what's required right now. That's movement. Not later when things are clearer. Not later when things are ready. Now. God touches our mouths, puts words there we don't have before. God overshadows us with strength we didn't know we possessed. And God walks with us, trembling, uncertain, beloved, into a future that we are called together to create. Even in our fear, we are called forward. Not because the path is clear, not because the movement itself is a choice to act when staying still would be easier. The choice to build when destruction surrounds us. The choice to plant when we might not live to see the harvest. That movement is called resistance. That movement is called faith. That movement is hope embodied. That movement is haste.